Hey class, Prof JC here, and I got to tell you, I'm really excited to start diving into our weekly videos. As you know, the last couple of weeks I've been down sick, and I got a little bit of a cough, and I might still cough a little bit today, but things are on the mend, and so I'm very excited to get back into these weekly videos, or I guess I shouldn't say back into it. This is our first one, but we'll keep these going throughout the rest of this semester together. I'm really excited for what we're going to talk about. Obviously, leadership is really important to this class, to what we're trying to do, to where you're going in life, right? To where the next steps are for you. And one of the most important things that every single leader needs to have is the ability to think and make decisions clearly. And here's what I think: the quicker you can make the better decision, especially in the world that we live in today, right? The quicker you can make really good decisions, the better off you're going to be. The better off your business is going to be, your organization, the people that you lead, all of that's going to be, the better that you understand how to make decisions. So I'm really big because I think that leadership is so much about communication and making decisions, right? So we've got to understand how to communicate really well, but we also have to understand how do we make really good decisions. In thinking about this in the last couple of years, I was introduced to this concept, and it's not a new concept. It's not like someone introduced it to me. I think it was online. It was through a podcast interview or something. I heard somebody talk about these concepts that are called mental models. So we're going to dive into what that is here in just a second. But as I begin to dive in, I begin to hear more very successful people talk about it. So a couple billionaires who talk about mental models, Charles Koch, and Charlie Munger. And there are several others who talk about it, but these two really talk about this idea about when you're making a decision, as you're thinking about your companies, you're thinking about profits, investments, mergers, acquisitions, big decisions that major companies are making, right? And these are billion-dollar companies, multi-billion-dollar companies. As they're making them, the CEOs and those who are in charge, they typically run all of their decisions through some kind of a mental model, okay? And so then I begin to study what these are, and I begin to apply them to my own life, and I will tell you, I've seen a lot of personal growth just by applying mental models. When there's decisions I have to make for myself, for a relationship, professional relationship, personal relationship, decisions I need to make for my for my children, for my family, right? I have found that diving in to these mental models, right, really helps me to understand the world better and helps me learn how to think better, right? And I think it'll do the same for you. So let's dive in, and over the next several weeks, what we're going to talk about excuse me, I still have some of the cough there. Over the next several weeks, what we'll be talking about are these mental models, and every single week we'll pick one, and I'm going to pick the most important that I think that are really important to you, and we're just going to dive in and discuss them. Sometimes we'll use a PowerPoint, sometimes it'll just be me here sitting talking about it, sometimes we'll pull up a website or something like that, and we'll kind of walk through. But my encouragement is, even past this course, past this program that you're in, right, as you go on through life, through your own leadership and management journeys, I want to encourage you to study mental models, to really dive in and figure out what they are. My understanding is that there are hundreds of them. I haven't gotten to hundreds of them. I've gotten to studying maybe 35 to 36 of some of the primary ones, but there are hundreds of mental models. And again, it's just a way of thinking that helps us make great decisions. So let me share my screen with you. And I'm just going to share my desktop with you here, and then we'll move right over here. Okay, I hope you all can see that. I've got myself up here in the corner. Make myself a little bit bigger so you can see me, so I don't disappear here. So I've got a couple of different websites that I want to walk us through. One is called jamesclear.com. James Clear is an author. If we go to his books, he wrote his most famous book is called Atomic Habit. And where did his book go? Okay, I just lost his book. Okay. If you're passionate about this idea of habits, I would recommend this book for you to read. If you're looking to change some habits, maybe if you're looking for something for your team or organization to go through, this is a phenomenal book to go through. As you know, we are the sum of our habits. Your team is the sum of its habits. Your organization is the sum of its habits, right? So the better habits that we have, the better outcomes that we're going to have. So this is a great book for you to pick up. But let's go back to the article here. He has an incredible article here called Mental Models, Learn How to Think Better and Gain a Mental Edge. Okay, so let's just dive in real quick. James Clear asked the question, what are mental models? And then he says this. Let's start with the definition. What are mental models? A mental model is an explanation of how something works. The phrase mental model is an overarching term for any sort of concept, framework, or worldview that you carry around in your mind. So it can be anything, right? You have mental models right now. You have certain ways of seeing the world. So for instance, I grew up back in the Midwest, and I grew up in a very Christian home. I grew up in a very Christian community, right? It's the Midwest, the Bible Belt. I guess it's north of the Bible Belt, but I felt like we were definitely in the Bible Belt. And I grew up in a town that had a church on every corner. I grew up in I grew up in a town that had a lot of Wesleyan churches. I grew up in the same town that the school Indiana Wesleyan University is in, and it's a small town, like 30,000 people, but we had a lot of Wesleyan. So those Christian Wesleyan beliefs, because we had a lot of Wesleyans there, they really permeated how the town works in a lot of ways. Not everything, because not everybody in my hometown of 30,000 people are Wesleyans, but because there were a lot of churches there that were Wesleyan, and a large employer there, the university, that was Wesleyan, that excuse me, that way of thinking really permeated what our city did. And so even for people who weren't Wesleyans or who weren't Christians, right? They weren't professing Christians. They had a certain way of viewing the world because of where they grew up, right? It's just that Christian culture really dominated that city, right? So if you came out of that city, you had certain, at least I did, I had certain ways of looking at different things, at different people, different ways of being, different ways of living. And I'll tell you, when I first came to California 17 years ago, I had a massive education, ahead of me. And I've really enjoyed my education out here, to be honest with you, here in Southern California. It expanded my mind, and I think I became much more inclusive and much more accepting, much more compassionate in how I see the world. But the reality is that the way I thought, okay, and I'm not saying whether it was right or it was wrong, okay? There will be some people probably in this call who have certain beliefs that probably align more with where I grew up, and some of you have beliefs that maybe align more to the Southern California way of viewing things. But both of those are frameworks, right? There's a framework in a small town like Marion, Indiana, because of so many churches and because of the kind of the Christian theme that kind of runs through the city, because of just how the city has developed, and one of the largest employers and a lot of the churches there. Come to Southern California, there's not a church on every corner, right? There's it's just a different way of thinking, a different way of being. What matters out here is the hustle. How hard are you working? Are you making a difference in the world that you're at? Are you doing big things? Are you focused on the journey ahead of you? These are mental frameworks. It's a way of thinking, right? So as we make decisions, if you live in a small town like Marion, Indiana, you're going to make certain decisions about certain subjects because of that context. You've grown up with that framework, right? If you grew up in Southern California, you're going to make decisions probably because of the framework you had out here. This is how mental models works. They are ways of thinking. And the reality is all of us have mental models, whether you think so or not. What I'm challenging you to do is over the next several years, right, as you're growing in your leadership journey, is to grow in your mental models, to grow in how you see the world, to grow in how you approach the world, right? And I would ask you this question, right? Have the mental frameworks and the concepts and the models that you have, are they working to help you achieve your goals and outcomes, right? For many of you, they are. And you look at your life and say, man, I've made a lot of good decisions. I have great relationships. I have great friendships. I've got a lot of great people around me. You're probably very proud of the choices that you've made. Okay. And you've got great mental frameworks. There's probably someone on this call, or someone listening to this, who would look at their life and say, I don't necessarily have all the mental frameworks that I want to have. I don't necessarily have all of the, I haven't made a lot of great decisions in life, and I'm trying to make better decisions. It starts with your mental models. It starts with your framework, right? So you already have mental models. I want to encourage you to dive deeper into what your mental models already are, but then look at some of the ones that we're going to talk about over the next few weeks and say, how can I use some of these mental models to help me make even better decisions as I move forward? Okay. So the article goes on and says right here, mental models help you understand life. For example, supply and demand is a mental model that helps you understand how the economy works, right? The more supply that there is of something, the less demand there is. The less supply there is of it, the more demand there is, right? Like right now, eggs. That's a really big thing, right? There's a lot less supply, so there's a huge demand, so the prices are going to increase for it. And you've seen that. I went to Walgreens and got a carton of eggs last week. Big mistake, $8.14 for just a carton of 12 eggs, right? Because there's a lot less supply, right? So that's just a framework for how the economy works. Game theory is a mental model that helps you understand how relationships and trust work. Entropy, and we're going to talk about this one in the next few weeks, is a mental model that helps you understand how disorder and decay work. Mental models also guide your perception and your behavior. They are the thinking tools that you use to understand life, to make decisions and solve problems. Learning a new mental model gives you a new way to see the world, like Richard Feynman learning a new math technique, okay? The mental models aren't perfect, but useful. There is no single mental model from physics or engineering, for example, that provides a flawless explanation of the entire universe. But the best mental models from those disciplines have allowed us to build bridges and roads and develop new technologies and even travel to outer space. As historian Yuval Noah Harari puts it, scientists generally agree that no theory is 100% correct. Thus, the real test of knowledge is not truth, but utility, right? Can this piece of knowledge, whatever it is, can I use it to do something in the world, right? Okay. The best mental models are ideas with the most utility, okay? They are broadly useful in daily life. Understanding these concepts will help you make wiser choices and take better actions. This is why developing a broad base of mental models is critical for anyone interested in thinking clearly, rationally, and effectively. And this is the job of a leader. This is your job, okay? Wherever you're at on your leadership journey, your job is to learn how to think critically, how to think clearly, how to think rationally, and how to think effectively and make good decisions. Right? The one thing that will take you out of your leadership positions, well, there are several things, but one of the things that will take you out, one of the most important things, is if you can't make good decisions. So I want you, over the next few weeks as we talk about this, to pick up some of these mental models, and I want you to figure out what does it mean to have a mental model, and how will it help me as I'm learning to make decisions in life. So that's what a mental model is. I want to go to one more website and just see if there's anything else that I've missed. What are mental models? It's how we understand the world. Not only do they shape how we think and how we understand, but they shape the connections and opportunities that we see. Mental models are how we simplify complexity, right? Why we consider some things more relevant than others, and how we reason. So we talked about that. Learning to think better, right? The quality of our thinking is proportional to the models in our head, right? So someone who doesn't know how to make good decisions, and you all know someone like that. You probably have a friend who makes really poor decisions, maybe in their relationships, in their professional life, whatever, in their personal life, right? Maybe you have a boss that made really poor decisions for their organization. I will tell you this, it all goes back to their mindset. It all goes back to how they're thinking. So if they have poor mental models, they're not able to make the best decisions, right? So it's really important that we have these mental models. And again, as I shared before, you have mental models. You already have them, right? You have ways of thinking. You have ways. If I brought out a subject like politics right now, and I talked about something, maybe it's the war in Ukraine or COVID, right? That was one that seemed to divide a lot of people. If I just mentioned COVID right now, certain things come to your mind, and you have a certain way of thinking it, and either, maybe it makes you angry, or maybe it makes you sad. That word makes you sad, or maybe it makes you frustrated. I don't know, whatever it is. But that way of thinking is because of your mental models, your frameworks about how you see the world, right? That's all that mental models are. And the better decisions that we make, the better decisions that we want to make, that means we've got to have better mental models. So what I want to see here, okay, so here's some mental models, right? From physics and chemistry: relativity, reciprocity, thermodynamics, inertia, velocity, leverage, activation, energy. Some from biology, the red queen effect, adaptation and the Red Queen effect, ecosystem, niches, self-preservation, cooperation. See if we can get systems thinking. We're going to talk a lot about that. What is systems thinking? I think when you can learn how to think as a system, then you really have a management. You've got a leadership mindset, right? When you learn, when you're able to think in terms of systems, the margin of safety, scale, bottlenecks. Excuse me, everybody. The mental models for numeracy, right? Distributions, compounding, sampling. So these are some difficult ones. I heard somebody say the other day that when you're able to take the larger concepts, the larger disciplines in the major fields, which is what we're seeing right here, right? The major fields of numeracy and systems thinking and biology and physics and chemistry. When you're able to understand the larger concepts, the larger disciplines, what they're talking about are the larger mental models. When you can see that, you have a much better understanding of the world. That's actually Charlie Munger, who's a multi-billionaire. And he talks about that. He said, I went out and I studied the primary disciplines from the major fields. And what he's talking about here is he studied mental models. And he said that really helped him make decisions as he went through life. So this can help you personally, can help you professionally, can help you with your business, with your finances, whatever it may be, with your leadership, with your organization, right? With management. All of this matters. So we're going to dive into this. I think if I come back to the last website here, it's got some, okay, so here's some examples. Common knowledge, comparative advantage, game theory, scarcity, supply and demand, anchoring, illusion of control, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We'll definitely talk about that one. Reciprocity, what does that mean? Inversion, working backwards, right? Activation energy, atomic energy, breakpoints, leverage, right? So again, there's a lot of mental models. We're not going to get to all of them, but it's there to help you think better. So here's the question I have for you that I want you to write. Someone, I want you to think about this, and I want you to reflect on this. Only you're going to see it, and I'm going to see it. No one else is going to see this, so I want you to reflect deeply. What is, and I want you to list off one mental model that you currently have that is not working for. So this is a two-part question, actually. What is one mental model? That's a way of thinking, right? A way of seeing the world. What's one mental model that you currently have that is not working for you? Okay, that has probably led you to make some poor decisions that have not gotten you the results that you want. I want you to think about that. And then the flip side of that is, what is one mental model that you currently have that is really working for you, right? A way that you see the world that has really helped you, that has really impacted you. It's helped other people as well. So I want you to answer that question, right? You can answer that in two, in one paragraph, two paragraphs, however you want to. But again, the question is, what is one mental model that is not working for you? Right, and something you need to change. And then the second one is, what is a mental model that has really worked well for you in life? And I'd love to read about that. All right, everybody, thanks so much. I'm really excited about the next several weeks as we dive in and we get to learn more about these mental models. They're going to be very important for you as you move about your leadership journey. So as always, and I like to say this all the time, if you have any questions of me, feel free to reach out. You've got my email. I look forward to reading your answers. Take care. I'll see you next week.